All right. I heard you. And this video is the answer to your question, who would I vote for if I was in your state or territory? Now, if you already know who I am and what I do, then please share this video and help this to get out there. If you don't know who I am, well, I'm known as the Marbles Guy because of my videos teaching Australians about how preferential voting works. So keep on watching because I'll bet you're going to learn a few things today. In this video, I'm going to cover, at your request, how I personally would vote in each of the 6 states and 2 territories in Australia in the Senate. I'm not going to cover the lower house, simply because there's 150 different seats to talk about. But I do recommend that you download your lower house how to vote cards from this website, Turning Point Australia, tpaust.com.au. Now, you can also follow their upper house or Senate recommendations if you would like to, but what I'll be doing and talking about in this video is actually a little bit different to what they're doing. Not that one's bad and the other's good. The Turning Point Australia how to vote cards are actually really good, and they do follow the strategy that I laid out in my Marbles videos. So don't feel bad if you've already voted and followed their card, or if you just want to follow their card. In any case, that's completely fine. It's at least 90 or 95% as good as what I'm going to be talking about in this video. But I do think that how I'm planning to vote in the Senate is an improvement. I'm going to go through each state one by one. So if you want to jump to just your state or territory, check the chapters in the video description. And if you're pressed for time, I'll do a roundup at the end with every single state, without any explanation or reasoning, just the order that I would vote in every state and territory in the Senate at the end of the video. Check the description if you want to jump to that time code. Now, before we begin, I want to be clear. I have no sponsors for my channel, no advertisers. I am not paid by anyone to advocate for, against, or about anything. I have no financial conflicts of interest of any kind. Everything I say is 100% genuinely my opinion, uninfluenced by anything other than my opinion. My name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I've been a political commentator for 16 years. I am the Marbles Guy, but I'm best known for my work defending human rights on the streets of Melbourne during the madness of the COVID lockdowns. I am 100% viewer supported, which is how I can be 100% independent. And you can support my independence by buying my best-selling books, my multi-award-winning DVD, my t-shirts, my hoodies, and merch from goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. Because that's how I pay my bills whilst being full-time and completely independent. So thanks to you for buying my stuff, and rest assured that no one buys my words. No one pays for my opinions. That is my promise to you. Having said that, I am all about freedom. Less government, less red tape, less green tape, lower taxes, lower spending, more freedom, with personal responsibility. And I vote accordingly. So whilst I am 100% independent, I am not unbiased. I am extremely biased towards the parties and the people that agree with my vision of an Australia with less government, less taxes, and more freedom. And in this election, the Senate is crucial. We know that the Senate is important because over the last 30 years or so, we've seen the Australian Greens Party completely, in my opinion, destroy Australian politics by having just a handful of senators. But with those few senators, they've been able to hold the balance of power and drag the entire country in their direction. So they drag us towards more government power, more red tape, more green tape, more taxes, more spending, and as a result, less freedom. They have used a handful of Senate seats to drag our country in exactly, in my opinion, the wrong direction. So we need to learn from their tactics in order to do the opposite of what they've done. And that is exactly why we need to prioritize voting for smaller, freedom-friendly parties in the Senate and use our amazing preferential voting system to make sure that if the really good minor party candidates don't get in, then our vote won't go to any of the bad options. It will still help the Liberal National Party to get senators elected instead of the Labor Party or the Greens. And then, in a worst-case scenario, as I will detail in a minute, we want to make sure that the Greens don't get a seat, even if that means that Labor do. I'll explain that as I go through. One last note before I answer the question that so many of you have been asking me. I promise I will get there. When voting in the Senate, you have to choose between voting for at least 6 options above or at least 12 options below the line. The difference is, when you vote above the line, you simply are supporting all the candidates in that party in the order that the party lists them. But when you vote below the line, you can select each individual candidate in whatever order you would like. Why would you want to do that? Well, for example, in South Australia, where the excellent Senator Alex Antic is a senator for the otherwise disappointing Liberal Party, you might choose to vote below the line so that you can support Senator Antic personally, but not also be supporting the other less inspiring candidates on his ticket. But honestly, even then, I personally wouldn't bother voting below the line in this particular election, because right across the board, the Liberal Party are just my backstop. They're the first of the major parties that I would bother to put down, and they're there to catch my vote if all the good minor parties miss out. So, given that Senator Alex Antic is in their number one spot already, i.e. he will be the first Liberal Party senator to be elected in South Australia, then in my opinion, there is in this election nowhere in Australia that really needs me or you to vote below the line in this particular election, in my opinion. So, for that reason, this video assumes that, hey, if you're voting below the line, then you don't really need my input. You probably already have wrapped your head around the system well enough to figure it out for yourself. You've got your own plans for how to use your vote, and good on you. Go and do that. But in this video, I'm going to tell you how I would vote if I was voting above the line. And to be honest, in this particular election, that is how I would actually vote. So this video is how I would actually vote in this election if I was in your state or territory. And yes, I'm following the strategies that I explained in my marbles videos. And if you haven't seen them, then I strongly recommend you watch them straight after you finish this one. I'll put the link in the description. The strategy is to put all the good freedom-friendly minor parties up the top, all of them, as many as you have in your state. Then use the Liberal Party as a backstop, the place where your vote will end up if none of the better options get elected, and I'll explain it for each state as we go through. And then there is a strategy that I follow for the Labor Party to help protect against the Greens. Again, we'll cover that. All right, I think that's enough stuffing around. Let's get down to business in alphabetical order, starting with the ACT. The ACT is a territory, not a state, so they only get 2 senators instead of 12, and because only half the Senate is elected in each election, that means that they're only electing a single senator and not the 6 that will be elected from each state. For this reason, there's far fewer parties contesting in the ACT. In fact, there's only 7 contesting for the Senate. And given that you have to vote for at least 6 above the line, this means that there is only one that we're not going to put a number next to, and that means that we are going to be putting some numbers next to some of the parties that we don't like. But the principle of what we're doing still applies, whether you're in a state or a territory. All the good parties at the top above the major parties. Then the Liberal Party as the first of your major party backstops to catch the vote if all the little ones miss out. And then we put the bad parties underneath because in the case of the territories, we won't yet have used up all 6 of the mandatory minimum numbers, so we have to keep going. All right, in the ACT, it's very simple. I would give my number 1 to the Heart Libertarian Alliance. Now, an alliance just simply means that there's 2 parties that have teamed up, in this case in the ACT. You'd be familiar with them from the Liberal National Party. That is a coalition, an alliance as well. So the Heart Libertarian Alliance, they are my first pick. Now, it so happens that there are no other good options in the ACT, unfortunately. So I have to put my backstop in second place. Whereas I would have loved to have put 4 or 5 good minor parties and then the backstop. Well, I don't have that option in the ACT. So number 1 to the Heart Libertarian Alliance. In the number 2 spot, I'll put my backstop, the Liberal Party. Then the hope is that if the Libertarians don't get this Senate seat, which in the ACT is exceptionally unlikely to be honest, then the Liberal Party will get my vote and my vote will never go any further down the ticket. But there is a risk that it might. You see, what might happen in a place like the ACT is that, first the Libertarian Party gets eliminated, and that's quite likely, to be honest. And then there's a scary possibility that the Liberal Party candidate might be eliminated as well, and it'll end up being a race between, for example, the Labor Party and the Greens, depending on the Senate spot, or possibly more likely between David Pocock, who is a current independent senator, and the Labor Party. Now, there's no good options here. So do we want to have no influence over the outcome of that, or do we want to maybe pick the less bad option? Now, I mentioned earlier the Turning Point How to Vote cards, which I highly recommend because they are a fantastic starting point, even though my own recommendations differ from theirs. We differ in the details. In the big picture, in the big strategy, what they're advocating very much aligns with my marbles videos and with my strategy. But they've actually put David Pocock as their number 3. That's their kind of idea of the best of the bad bunch, and I disagree on this one. I would actually put Labor at number 3, directly behind the Liberal Party, with David Pocock in number 4. That's just my opinion. Now, remember, your vote will only reach numbers 3 or 4 if all of your higher choices, numbers 1 and 2 in this case, have already been eliminated. You're not voting for these people. You're simply influencing the outcome towards your idea of the least bad outcome if it comes to that. And if it comes to it, it's a worst case scenario, right? And I get it. Voting for any of these people, it just feels like being forced to deliberately wet your pants, right? Everything in your body is fighting against you and saying that you mustn't do this. But you need to number 6 boxes, and it's not a bad thing to still have some influence over the outcome in a worst-case scenario. When we're deciding between 2 really bad outcomes, it's okay to choose to have an influence and make it the slightly less bad outcome. So that's my top 4. Then I would put animal justice in 5 and Sustainable Australia in 6, even though I consider both parties to be absolutely terrible. But the only other option in the ACT is the Greens, and I don't want to put a number next to them at all. In reality, what's going to happen here is the Libertarians, Animal Justice Party and Sustainable Australia will all be eliminated really early. So that means my number 1, my number 5 and my number 6 will all be gone very early on, long before my vote can ever reach the number 5 or number 6. So there's no way that the number 2 choice of the Liberal Party is going to be eliminated before the Animal Justice Party, before the Sustainable Australia Party, and there's certainly no way that the Labor Party are going to be eliminated before those other minor parties get eliminated. There is simply no way that my vote is going to make it through numbers 2 and 3 and get to numbers 5 and 6 while they're still in the running. They will have been eliminated. It's just not going to happen. So your vote will never actually reach 5 or 6. In practice, by voting this way in the ACT, you're giving a gesture of support to the Libertarians, but your vote will probably end up helping the Liberal Party. Now, if they don't get the seat, then your vote will help to choose between David Pocock and the Labor Party. Now, at that point, yeah, you are just helping to choose between the lesser of 2 evils. Sorry about that. Why do you live in the ACT? Of course, the politics there sucks. So, for the ACT, I'd vote like this. My number 1 is the Libertarian Party in column F, then E, D, B, C, A, and in that order. That is the ACT. Now for New South Wales. Being a state with 6 seats up for grabs, there's lots of parties contesting this election. But only a handful are actually supporters of freedom, so our job is pretty easy. I would vote for the Heart Libertarian Rennick Coalition as my number 1 in New South Wales because I'm a libertarian. That is my political philosophy, so they get my number 1. The Libertarians used to be called the Liberal Democratic Party. They've actually been around for more than 20 years and they've had members elected as federal senators as well as members elected in New South Wales, Victoria and West Australia state parliaments. So they're a great party with, in my opinion, great values and a great history of electoral success. So me personally, I would be putting them at number 1 absolutely everywhere except for Queensland, which I'll get to when it's Queensland's turn. Okay, so New South Wales, Libertarians Heart Rennick Coalition at number 1. That's column I for those who want to note down the column order rather than the names of the parties. My number 2 goes to One Nation, so that would be putting a number 2 in column F. Now, they're a party also with lots of history, lots of electoral success, and very solid principles. I would put number 3 for Family First in column E. They've recently returned to politics after a few decades away, but historically they've been a solid and successful party. My number 4 goes to the Australian Christians, so that's a 4 in column H. In my opinion, they have good principles, even though they've never actually won any seats federally. My number 5 goes to Trumpet of Patriots in column M. Now, this is the new Clive Palmer party. Long story. That whole situation is a mess, which is why I'm not putting them higher. I do support Clive. Clive is one of the good people in the world. Look at what he did with the hydroxychloroquine during COVID. He's not the enemy, but sometimes he's his own worst enemy. So, I'm certainly going to include Trumpet of Patriots before the Liberal Party, but only just, because that whole situation is a mess, and honestly, it has not been handled very well at all, in my opinion. So, finally, after Trumpet of Patriots, we get to the backstop, the Liberal National Party, with my number 6 going in column N. This is essentially my backstop, my reserve, my best of a bad bunch option. If my vote doesn't end up getting someone better elected, then it gets caught and hopefully stays here. But here I'm going to do something a bit controversial. I'm going to add a number 7. And I'm going to put my number 7 next to the Labor Party, which in New South Wales will be in column A. I know, it looks bad. Let me explain. This principle applies to every state. If your vote doesn't stick to any of your 1 to 6 options, what that means is that there's still a Senate seat up for grabs, and most likely it's come down to a contest between Labor and the Greens. Now, you can stop with the Liberal Party, and in that scenario, your vote will have no influence over which of those remaining 2, Labor or Greens, get that last remaining seat. Or you can recognise that if your vote didn't already stick with any of those other options, the better options, including the Liberal Party, then we're already looking at a disaster scenario. This is a bad outcome in your state. Someone bad is going to get that last Senate seat. So It's a bad outcome for the Labor Party to win that Senate seat, sure, but it's an even worse outcome for the Greens to get it, in my opinion. So me personally, I will use the Liberal Party as my first backstop at number 6 in New South Wales to try and catch my vote and hope that it never goes any further. But I will put the Labor Party last as my scorched earth disaster scenario final resort, as a way of warding off the Greens, the Socialists, the Animal Justice Party, the Sustainability Party, those really toxic, in my opinion, Marxist parties. And yeah, I will hope that my vote never finds its way through to the Labor Party. Of course, I don't want that to happen. But if it's going to come down to a contest between Labor and any of those other options, I know which one is less bad. So, controversial, but there is method to my madness. So for those keeping track, that means in New South Wales, I'd be voting column I, F, E, H, M, N, A, in that order, in New South Wales. Now, next is the Northern Territory. Now again, there is only one Senate seat up for grabs in any election in any of the territories. So far fewer parties jump into a contest to try and win in a place like the Northern Territory. So it's simpler. It's more like what we saw in the ACT. I'll be voting number 1 for the Libertarian Party, which is what I'll do everywhere except for Queensland. I'll vote number 2 for One Nation, number 3 for the Country Liberal Party, or the CLP. They are the backstop in this case. There's not a lot of parties running, so my backstop is in 3rd instead of in 6th. Now understand that this election will almost certainly come down to being a contest between Labor and the Country Liberal Party, CLP, which means that your vote will be very unlikely to go past that number 3 Country Liberal Party position. But if it does, then we want to ensure that that's the lesser of the remaining evils that gets our vote. So for me, and again, this is going to be a little bit controversial, for me, it's going to be the Legalised Cannabis Party that I'm going to put at number 4. I don't personally think that the government should be spending our money on the war on drugs, with all of its violence and militarisation of police and human rights abuses. So, I agree with the main aim of the Legalised Cannabis Party, which is to end the war on drugs, even though I disagree on most of their other things because they are largely a socialist party in my opinion. But remember, this probably doesn't actually matter because they will have been eliminated long before the Country Liberal Party gets eliminated, so my vote will almost certainly never end up with them at all, no matter what happens. Now, the same is true of the Citizens Party at number 5, because in reality, if somehow the CLP are eliminated, it's probably come down to already just being a race between Labor and the Greens, which is why Labor gets my number 6 position as my lesser of the remaining evils. This is my disaster scenario preference over the top of the 2 remaining parties, which I don't want to number at all, because they're the Greens and the Sustainable Australia Party. So that's how I would vote in the Northern Territory. If you want the letters, that means it's H, F, D, B, G, C. In that order, in the Northern Territory. Okay, Queensland is next. This is the one state where I wouldn't put the Libertarians at number 1. Not because I don't like their candidate, I actually do, but because I've had a lot to do with Senator Malcolm Roberts of One Nation over the years at a personal level, and he's been outstanding as a senator in my opinion. I've spent literally days at a time with him, and his work ethic is unlike anything I've ever seen in any other Australian politician, including the other good Australian politicians that are out there. Malcolm's work ethic is next level. Also, Queensland also has a few fantastic senators already, 2 of whom are trying to regain their seats in this election. We have both Malcolm Roberts for One Nation and Jared Rennick for People First. Now, he used to be a Liberal Party senator. He left because, well, the Liberal Party no longer aligned with his values, and he started the People First Party. I would love to see them both retain their seats. I think they both deserve it. So I'll actually be putting both of them above the Libertarians, making Queensland the only state where I won't be putting the Libertarians at the number 1 position. So number 1 is One Nation in column Q because of Malcolm Roberts personally. Number 2 is Senator Jared Rennick's People First Party in column G. Then after that, my card is identical to the Turning Point card, which you can get from tpaust.com.au, with the Libertarian Party in number 3 in column S, Family First at number 4 in column N, the Great Australia Party and Heart Party Coalition at number 5 in K. Trumpeter Patriots are once again placed in the final position just ahead of my backstop in number 6 in column B. The Liberal National Party are my backstop in column I. And once again, controversially, I'll be putting Labor in the number 8 position in column J. Now, I explained my reasons for that when I broke down the New South Wales card, so watch that section if you're confused as to why I would choose to include Labor at all, given that I don't actually have to. In short, it's because if my vote moves past all of my good options, and then doesn't even stick to my backup of the Liberal National Party, then we're in a bad situation already. It's probably now a toss-up between the Labor Party and the Greens for that last Senate spot. And if that's the choice, I would prefer Labor every single time. So I will make the Labor Party my absolute last resort to try and ward off the threat of the Greens Party winning that final Senate seat. Okay, so the columns in order are Q, G, S, N, K, B, I, J. In that order for Queensland. South Australia is next. The principles for me are exactly the same. In this case, Libertarians at number 1 in column A, One Nation gets the number 2 in column P. People First gets my number 3 in column J. The number 4 for Family First in column M. Last of the good ones are Trumpeter Patriots, once again taking the last spot before my backstop with a number 5 in column G. As always, my preferred backstop is the Liberal National Party with a 6 in column C. And controversially, but as I've now explained a couple of times earlier in this video, I will add the Labor Party with a number 7 in column D, because if my vote goes past the Liberals as my backstop, then things are grim. And that last Senate seat is probably a toss-up between the Labor Party and the Greens. And if that's the case, I'd rather help the Labor Party defeat the Greens than for my vote to have no effect at all. That's why I put Labor on at the very end. Okay, so that is A, P, J, M, G, C, and finally D. In that order for South Australia. Tasmania is next, and let me say Tasmania could very well get a really good freedom-friendly minor party senator elected this time around. They nearly elected me to the Senate at the last election. In the end, due to people not using their preferences as well as they could and should have, I fell short, and as a result, Tammy Tyrrell got elected instead. Tasmania, the whole of Australia needs you to do better this time and send someone good to Canberra to fight for freedom for us all. So how would I vote in Tasmania? Number 1, Libertarian in column H. Number 2, One Nation in column I. Number 3 for me goes to Shooters, Fishers, Farmers in column L. Trumpeter Patriots take up their usual last of the good ones spot with a number 4 in column C. Then I'll put a 5 in column B for the Liberal Party as my backstop and finish with number 6 going to the Labor Party in column K as my disaster scenario backup to hopefully ensure that the Greens and or Jackie Lambie Party miss out on that last Senate spot. Again, if you missed my explanation earlier, don't freak out about me including Labor at the very end. All going well, your vote will never end up reaching them because it'll get used by someone before that point. But if it does get all the way down to them, that means you're facing a truly terrible outcome, and that last Senate spot has come down to a contest between Labor and somebody even worse than Labor, which is why I put Labor in the last spot. Not because I want to support them, but because I'd rather them than the Greens or Socialists or Jackie Lambie network in that worst case scenario. So for Tasmania, that's H, I, L, C, B, K in that order. Now we come to Victoria. Now we know that Victoria has what it takes to elect a good senator. They elected Senator Ralph Babet last election. He ran with the United Australia Party, and because senators get 2 terms, Senator Babet is safe this time around. He's not at risk. But Victoria, we need you to elect another great senator this time around as well. The UAP are not an option. That's the whole paperwork thing with Clive Palmer and the Trumpeter Patriots. I'm not going to go into the details here, but let me just explain what I would do. Me, I would vote Libertarian number 1, both because I'm ideologically aligned with the party, but also because I've met and I personally support Jordan Ditloff at a personal level, and also because the Libertarian Party with David Limbrick and Tim Quilty were the only political party in the Victorian government that stood with us as protesters to help defend and stand up for human rights during the COVID lockdowns in Melbourne, the most locked down city in the world. So for me, there's no question. This is a resounding number 1 in column P for the Libertarian Party, followed by One Nation with a number 2 in column K, People First with a number 3 in column O, Family First with a number 4 in column J, Shooters, Fishers, Farmers with a number 5 in column S, and then Trumpeter Patriots gets my number 6 in column H. The Liberal National Party are my backstop with a 7 in column A, and as per the other states, I will add the Labor Party in at number 8 as a disaster scenario last resort. If that final Senate spot comes down to a race between Labor and the Greens, which it very well could in a place like Victoria, I would rather help to defeat the Greens. Your vote won't go to Labor unless everyone else that's better, that you put higher on your card, has been eliminated. So you are not supporting Labor over the top of better parties. You're simply helping Labor to ward off an even worse option in a disaster scenario. So for me, that's a number 8 for Labor in column I. I'm going to cop so much hate from people who don't understand the system. Oh, he's supporting the Labor Party. No, I'm not. Listen to my explanations, please. Okay, that is P, K, O, J, S, H, A, I. In that order, in Victoria. All right, last but certainly not least, Western Australia. You guessed it, I'll be putting the Libertarian Party in number 1. So that's number 1 in column G. One Nation gets my number 2 in column M. I would personally put the Australian Christians with a number 3 in column B, but you might see that one differently, of course. People First gets my number 4 in column H. Then the Great Australia Party in column A gets my number 5. Trumpeter Patriots gets my number 6 in column D. The Liberal Party are, as always, my backstop with a number 7 in column Q. And finally, as usual, I am adding Labor onto the end as my disaster scenario backstop with an 8 in column L. Because again, just in case anyone has skipped to this part and hasn't heard the explanation yet, if my vote passes through all of the other better options, including passing through the Liberal Party, and it actually reaches Labor, that only happens because all of the better options are now out of the running, and that last Senate seat is a race between Labor and somebody even worse. Socialists, Sustainability Party, Greens. And if that's the case, I would rather help the Labor Party to ward off an even worse party than to stop at the Liberal Party and have no effect on the outcome from there. So, all for West Australia, that's column G, M, B, H, A, D, Q, L, in that order. And that's how I would vote in all Australian states and territories, all above the line and all following the strategy that I laid out in my marbles video, which I have linked in the description of this video. All going well, we can take some Senate spots away from the Greens and away from the Labor and Liberal parties and give them to some of these minor party senators who actually believe in freedom. Now, for those who also want to know how to vote in the lower house, I recommend you follow the Turning Point Australia How to Vote cards. That's tpaust.com.au. I just follow them in the lower house and then follow this video in the upper house. My name is Topher Field. This is the Topher Project. I am 100% viewer supported. So please head over to goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com and support me by buying my best-selling books, my award-winning DVD, my t-shirts and hoodies, and check out my Getting Your Head in the Game masterclass while you're there too. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. As promised, I'm going to finish with a full list of columns in order for every state and territory. So buckle up because you're about to fall asleep. ACT, F, E, D, B, C, A, in that order. New South Wales, I, F, E, H, M, N, A. Northern Territory, H, F, D, B, G, C. Queensland, Q, G, S, N, K, B, I, J. South Australia, A, P, J, M, G, C, D. Tasmania, H, I, L, C, B, K. Victoria, P, K, O, J, S, H, A, I. And WA, G, M, B, H, A, D, Q, L. And now everybody's either hypnotized or asleep. That's how I would vote in each state and territory in order to live up to my own values and to follow the strategy that I outlined for you in my marbles videos. If you don't know what my marbles videos are, you can find the link in the description. Everything that I've said in this video is 100% my own opinion. I am not paid by anyone or influenced by anyone except through the battle of ideas and my desire for more freedom, less red tape, less green tape, less taxes, less regulation. You can support my work and help maintain my independence by buying my books, my DVDs, and my merch from goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. You'll be helping me to keep doing what I do. Make sure you share this video before the election, or even just write down my recommendations for your particular state and share them with friends. It's time we kicked the major parties in the arse and gave a chance to our freedom-loving minor parties to elect some good senators to drag our politics in a better direction. My name's Topher Field, this is the Topher Project, and because there's an election on and this is all about how to vote, you bet I have to put an authorization on the end. So here it is, coming at you right now. As always, stay free. Authorized by Topher Field for Topher Field at Topher Field Studios.